गुड मॉर्निंग दोस्तों, मेरा नाम सुरेंद्र कुमार है और मैं अजय कुमार इंजीनियरिंग कॉलेज में असिस्टेंट प्रोफेसर के पद पर हूँ। मेरा डिपार्टमेंट है कंप्यूटर साइंस। आज मैं आपके लिए यहाँ पर एक टॉपिक लेके आया हूँ जो कि ऑब्जेक्ट ओरिएंटेड प्रोग्रामिंग विद जावा 4th सेमेस्टर के कोर्स में हमारे AKTU में चल रहा है और इट इज़ वेरी यूजफुल फॉर दोज हु वांट टू नो अबाउट द एरर्स व्हेन दे प्रोग्राम and what the errors they face and how to overcome these kinds of errors. So basically this topic is exception handling. So what is exception? If you talk about the exception, so exceptions are those conditions which we can't predict or during runtime we are not able to handle those kinds of problems. So with exception handling we try to solve it in during the programming. When we write a program, then we start with the future perspective ki what kinds of problem arise in the program. So exception handling handles these kinds of topics. So if you talk about really does a program run successfully at its very first attempt? When we start programming, so we learn very small things, how to write a program, how to write a program with a syntactical way. So in such conditions we learn different kinds of syntax, how to program it, what are the different way to write a program. So during the writing and when we write a program, after writing when we compile it, so there may be a lot of mistakes done by developer. It may be typing mistakes, or it may have some other logical mistakes. So if we talk about mistakes and we categorize those mistakes, so there are basically 3 kinds of errors we face during our program compilation and runtime. So we categorize these in 3 ways. First is syntax error. These errors comes on compilation times. Second is semantic errors. So it leads the program to producing unexpected output. Semantic, you can say, if we want add something and by mistake we put minus, it will not give you any error during compilation or runtime, but the output will be something different, that is unexpected output. Next it is third type of error is runtime errors. So runtime errors is very critical errors. How it is critical? Because it comes during runtime. If we talk about the runtime, suppose we are starting for a journey and we do not check our car and in between it is breakdown. So when we are on travel and it is breakdown, that is very critical conditions. In the same way, when we write a program and there is no compilation error, but when we run the program, when user run the program and it terminates abnormally, so it is very critical things. So many of time it may lead to system crash also. So syntactical errors we can handle with the help of giving syntax or before running the program. Semantics errors we can generate by our logic. So if our logic is good, we never got such kind of errors, but runtime errors may occurs in different ways. So here in this topic we are just dealing with the runtime errors, that is called exceptions. So exception handling in Java, the exceptions handling in, if you talk about the exception handling in Java, is one of the powerful mechanisms to handle the runtime errors. So the normal flow of the application can be maintained, otherwise it will be interrupted. So what is exception in Java? If we talk about the dictionary meaning, exception is abnormal condition. So it is abnormal condition, a condition which is not normal. So in Java An exception is an event. It is an event that disrupts the normal flow of the program, and it is an object which is thrown at runtime. So Java provide you an exceptions through an object at runtime. So what different kinds of runtime error can occur, we will discuss here. Take a scenario when you are dividing a number x by y and you are getting the result z, and and you are giving for I equals 0, I less than 10, I plus plus, or and you start divide it y, value of y will be assigned by I, and you are giving z equals x over y. You will see here in the first case y will assign as a 0. So in the first case y will be assigned as a 0. So this is dividing by 0, and you know in mathematics if you divide a number by 0, so it have some unexpected error, or you can say it is something infinite, but here there is no infinite assigned in the computer science. So it is a error which is dividing a number by 0. So this exceptions throws at runtime only, not at starting. Next, accessing an element that is out of bound of an array. Now you are trying to access an element which is out of bound an array. For example, if you have an array A whose size is 5 and you are assigning the value to 5, 7, 8, 6 at any time you want to access this, right? So how will access? You will access it through for loop, and your for loop will start from 0, I plus plus, or you can say it is you will give a condition here I less than 5. If you by mistake give it I less than or equal to 5, so it will go up to a 5, and you know in an array your index will start a 0 to a 4. There will not be any value at a 5. So you are trying to access here a5 which is out of bound. So it will throw an exception. It will terminate abnormally, right? Next, trying to store incompatible data elements. So sometime we try to store the data which is not fit in the given data element. So it will again show an exception or overflow. Next, using negative value as an array size. So negative value in array size, for example, if we are giving assigning a value 2 minus 1 to 25, so the size is negative here, so you can't assign a value to negative value using negative value as an array size. So it is a negative value for the array size, or you can say the array size is minus 5. This is also a one kind of example for this. Next is trying to convert from string data to a specific value, data value. For example, converting a string ABC to an integer value. So here we will see that you will see that you have a string 5 and this is to be converted into integer. So you can cast it. It will not give you any problem if you cast it as a this. But if you are casting an ABC and you are trying to convert into integer, it will not be converted into integer because the value of ABC will not be specify any integer value. So it will throw an exception. Or you can have a file errors. File errors means if you want to open a file and you don't have any permission, then how you will do it? So before opening, your file must be there, otherwise how the system will search. So file opening, and before writing a file there must exist a file, otherwise where the system will write the data on a file which doesn't exist on your drive. So in the same way, when you are talking about file errors, so we have an opening a file in read mode that doesn't exist or no read permission. So this kind of error comes into runtime. Or opening a file in write or update mode which has read only permission. Again one kind of situation can occur. So file doesn't exist and you are trying to read it, or file doesn't have read permission, still you want to read it. So this is an exception, or it will throw an exception or give you the error at runtime. Or in the same way, when you try to write or update some information on a file, but the file is don't have any permission to write it, that means it is in read only mode. So these kinds of errors occurs during runtime. So I will revise again: the divide number by 0, accessing an element that is out of bound of an array, or trying to store incompatible data elements, or using negative value as array size, or typing to convert from string data to a specific data value. Like I have taken example, string ABC is to be converted into integer, which is not possible. And last is file error. We are trying to open a file which we don't have permission to open it, or it doesn't exist in the directory. We are trying to write a file, update a file, it doesn't have permission to write, it is in read only permission, read only mode. So these kinds of common errors can occur during runtime. There are a lot of errors also we will discuss further. So again, corrupting memory, this is a common with pointers. Corrupting, sometimes you have face a problem, you are trying to access a file which you have saved sometime before in your computer, but the file is not reading, it is showing an error, file doesn't find, or it is trying to access but it doesn't opening, or the system is hanged. So this kind of errors say comes in the form of corrupting memory. So we will take a common scenario. So there are some scenarios. We talk about first scenario, a scenario where an arithmetic exceptions occurs. So arithmetic exceptions example is I have discussed as divide by 0. So here I have taken integer a which have a value 50 and we are trying to divide it by 0. When we are trying to divide by 0, it will throw an exception that is called arithmetic exception, or internally it is divide by 0 exception. Clear? Or we have another value also as I have discussed कि during a particular way, for example, if you are having a loop I equal 8, I less than minus 5, I minus minus. So here what you say, 8 will start reducing one by one, and at any point of time it will be equal to 0, and then we are trying to divide a value, for example 50 by I. So it will throw an exception, arithmetic expression, that is divided by 0, right? Next scenario is null pointer exception. So what is null pointer exception? So if we have a null value in a variable and performing any operation on the variable through a null pointer, for example, we have a string s which is assigned a null value, and we are trying to find out the length of this string s, because it's contain null value, so null value doesn't have any length of the string, so it will throw an exception, null pointer exception, right? Next scenario is number format exception. So if the formatting of any value, variable or a number is mismatched, it may result into number format exceptions. Suppose a variable that has characters, converting into its variable to digit, so it will cause an number format exception. As I already giving you an example of string ABC to convert into int. So you are using integer parse int with s string, and s string is ABC. In case if you have s equals string 7 to 8, then it will not throw any exception, because it is easy, 728 will converted, but ABC doesn't have any integer value and trying to convert it into integer, so it will throw an exception, that is number format exception. Next scenario is array index out of bound exception. So as already I have discussed, we have a fixed size of an array, and that size cannot be increased during runtime. Even we have different data types or data structure in Java like array list, which can be increased its size during runtime, but normal array is not allowed to increase its size in runtime. So here we have an array, when array exceeds to its size, so array index out of bound exception occurs. So reason for this is, for example, we have an array int a and its size is fixed to 5, and we are assigning value to a10 which is not exist. A10 in 10 index is not exist in a, because you have fixed the size it up to 5. So maximum array index will be a4 starting with a0. So it will throw an exception, that is array index out of bound exception. I hope it is clear to all of you. So now there are different kinds of exceptions we have discussed here. So the point arises how to handle these kind of exception in our program. So we have different ways to handle this exception by using try catch block, or using next way is to try, or we have multiple catch blocks. Again we have one more keyword finally by which we can handle these exceptions. Next there is a throw key by which we can throw an exception. Next is exception handling with method overriding. We can method of throwing the exception, or we create our own custom exceptions. So this is really very good concept in Java by which we can avoid runtime errors and catch the exceptions occurred during runtime. Even many kinds of validation process also done with the exception handling, that is custom exceptions. For example, you think about when you are trying to enter mobile number through user, so you are restricting the user to enter only 10 digits. It may be condition user can enter only 9 digit or user can enter more than 10 digits. So 9 digit or more than 10 digit is not a format of mobile number. So you can restrict the user with catching the exception with this kind of conditions and restrict, and so that the wrong information cannot be entered in your database. So this kinds of exception can also be handled with custom exceptions. Now we discuss these one by one. So first is Java try catch block. So try catch block, there are two words, try and catch. So one thing is try, you will try block and catch block. Try block will take those code of your program on which you want there may chance to have some error or exceptions, and catch block will have that kind of exception that is thrown. It is cached through this catch keyword. So let's see the definition of try catch try block first. So Java try block is used to enclose the code that might throw an exception. So you have to guess at the coding time which code may throw an exception. So you will enclose that code into the try block. So if an exception occurs at the particular statement in the try block, the rest of the block code will not execute it. For example, you have statement 1, 2, 3, 4, and in statement 2 you will have an exception occurred. For example, we are taking arithmetic exception. So here the condition is that statement 3, 4 and further will not be executed. So to avoid this kind of situation, it is recommended not to keep the code in try block that will not throw an exception, right? So only that code is to be put in the try block which may occurs have exception. So only that code that may throw an exception will be in try block. Java try block must be followed by either catch or finally block. So there are two options after try, the catch and finally. Try is the code that may throw an exception, and catch exceptions class name and reference, right? So syntax of the finally is, you will just write finally here, the code that may throw an exception will come in try, and next is finally in the next code. So we will discuss further block of the this exception handling in next video. Thank you very much. I hope you find some information in exception handling. Thank you so much.